Kim Do-young was grading physics tests when the sky turned purple. At first, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. He had been sitting in his university office for hours, marking his students' quantum physics exams. But when he heard screams from the hallway, he knew something was very wrong. He ran to the window of his third-floor office at Seoul National University. What he saw made him drop his red marking pen. Massive ships, each one bigger than the largest skyscraper in Seoul, were appearing through holes in the clouds. They were dark gray and shaped like arrowheads pointing down at the city. "This can't be real," Do-young whispered to himself. But it was real. Very real. His phone buzzed. The emergency alert system was going crazy. Messages were popping up one after another. "This is not a drill. Seek a shield or immediately. Unknown aircraft over major cities worldwide. Stay away from windows and tall buildings." Do-young grabbed his laptop and ran out of his office. In the hallway, students and teachers were running in all directions. Some were crying. Others were trying to make phone calls, but the networks were already failing. "Everyone, get to the basement," Do-young shouted, taking charge of the situation. As a professor, he felt responsible for his students' safety. He helped guide a group of scared people toward the stairs. They had just reached the first floor when the first blast hit. The whole building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Through the glass doors, Do-young saw a beam of bright blue light strike a building in the distance. The building didn't explode. It simply fell apart, like someone had undone all the forces holding it together. "That's impossible," Do-young said, his scientist's mind trying to understand what he was seeing. The way that building collapsed went against everything he knew about physics. Whatever technology these aliens had, it was far beyond human understanding. More buildings began to fall. The aliens weren't just destroying structures, they were taking apart the very fabric of human civilization. Do-young led his group to the basement, where they huddled together in the dark. Through the small basement windows, they could see flashes of blue light and hear the strange humming sound of the alien ships. Hours passed. Do-young's phone died. The internet stopped working. The power went out. In the darkness, someone had a small radio that still worked on batteries. The news was the same everywhere. London, New York, Tokyo, Moscow. All the major cities were being taken apart by the alien ships. Then, after what seemed like forever, everything went quiet. The humming stopped. The blue flashes ended. Someone brave enough to look outside came back with news. The ships were just hovering there, waiting. A voice boomed across the city. It spoke in every language at once, somehow making perfect sense to everyone who heard it. "People of Earth, I am Supreme Warlord Calvex of the Stellar Dominion. Your planet is now under our control. Resistance is not just futile, it is impossible. We have disabled your military capabilities. Your leaders have surrendered. You will receive further instructions soon. Remain calm, and you will not be harmed." Do-young sat in the basement, holding his laptop close. On the screen was his unfinished research paper about quantum entanglement. Just that morning, he had been excited about a breakthrough in his calculations. Now, it all seemed pointless. How could his simple human physics compete with aliens who could take buildings apart at the atomic level? But something in his mind wouldn't let go of what he had seen. The way those buildings fell apart, there was a pattern to it, a scientific principle. If he could just understand it. Little did Do-young know, his scientific curiosity and understanding of quantum physics would soon make him the most important human on Earth. 3 months after the invasion, Earth was a very different place. The aliens had set up their government centers in every major city. Their tall, dark ships now served as towers where they lived and worked. Humans were allowed to go about their daily lives, but everything had changed. Do-young had gone back to teaching, but his classes were different now. The aliens wanted humans to learn only basic science. They said advanced physics might give humans dangerous ideas. But Du Young kept thinking about what he had seen during the invasion. He wrote his ideas in a small notebook he kept hidden in his apartment. One morning, huge screens appeared in every city. The aliens had put them up overnight. Supreme Warlord Calvex's face appeared on all of them at once. He was tall and gray-skinned, with deep purple eyes that seemed to look into everyone's soul. "People of Earth," he said in his multi-language voice, "the Stellar Dominion has a tradition. When we conquer a planet, we grant one wish to one person from that world. This wish can be anything within our power to give. We do this to show our mercy and greatness." The announcement caused chaos. Everyone started talking about what they would wish for if they were chosen. Some wanted money. Others wanted power. Many wanted the aliens to leave Earth forever, but everyone knew that wouldn't be allowed. "The selection process will be fair," Calvex continued. "We will test representatives from each region. The one who shows the most interesting way of thinking will be chosen." Over the next week, the aliens set up testing centers. They chose people randomly from every city. Du Young wasn't picked at first, but he watched as others went into the alien ships for testing. Many came out looking confused or upset. Then one day, while teaching his class, 2 alien guards came to his classroom. They were tall and wore armor that seemed to move like liquid metal. "Kim Du Young," one said, "you will come with us for testing." His students watched in silence as he gathered his things. Du Young wasn't afraid. He was curious. This was his chance to see alien technology up close. The inside of the alien ship was strange. The walls looked solid but felt like they were breathing. They took him to a room where a machine scanned his brain. Then they asked him questions, but not normal questions. They showed him puzzles that seemed to break the rules of reality. They asked him how he would solve problems that seemed impossible. Du Young answered everything honestly. He told them about his ideas on quantum physics. He explained how he thought their building-destroying beams worked. He even shared his theories about their faster-than-light travel. The aliens kept their faces blank, but Du Young could tell they were surprised by his answers. They talked to each other in their own language, making sounds that hurt his ears. A week later, the screens lit up again. Everyone on Earth watched as Calvex appeared. "We have chosen," he announced. "The human Kim Du Young from Seoul will receive our gift. His mind works in ways that amuse us. He will be brought to our court in 3 days to make his wish." Du Young sat in his apartment, watching the announcement with shaking hands. Out of billions of people, they had chosen him. Now he had to decide. What would he wish for? He looked at his hidden notebook, filled with equations and theories about alien technology. Maybe, just maybe, he could wish for something that would change everything. But he would have to be very careful about how he asked for it. The alien ship that came to collect Du Young was smaller than the city-sized vessels, but it was still impressive. It looked like a silver teardrop falling from the sky. When it landed in front of his apartment building, a door melted open in its side. 2 alien guards led him inside. The ship's interior was even stranger up close. The walls shifted colors like oil on water, and the floor seemed to move to help him walk. Du Young wished he could take notes, but they hadn't let him bring anything. "You'll need a translator," one guard said. "Humans can't handle hearing too much of our language directly." They took him to a small room where a young woman was waiting. She stood up when they entered and bowed slightly. "I'm Park Jae-yun," she said in perfect Korean. "I'll be your translator during your time in the court." She looked tired, but had kind eyes. Du Young noticed she wore a small silver device behind her ear. As they walked through the ship together, Jae-yun explained things in a quiet voice. "The court has strict rules," she said. "Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look directly at Calvex's eyes. And most importantly, don't ask questions before making your wish." The ship took off so smoothly that Du Young barely felt it move. Through the windows that appeared and disappeared in the walls, he watched Earth get smaller below them. In just minutes, they were approaching something massive in space. the Supreme Warlord's flagship. It's called the Dominion's Crown, Jai-Yun whispered. It's bigger than any city on Earth. The flagship was shaped like a giant dark crystal, with thousands of smaller ships moving around it like bees around a hive. Their small ship flew into an opening that looked tiny compared to the whole structure. As they walked through the flagship's corridors, Jai-Yun pretended to stumble. As Du-Young helped her up, she slipped something into his pocket. "Don't look at it now," she whispered. "Wait until you're alone." The throne room was enormous. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness. Hundreds of aliens stood in rows, all wearing flowing robes that seemed to be made of living metal. At the far end, sitting on a throne that floated in the air, was Supreme Warlord Calvex. Du-Young had only seen him on screens before. In person, Calvex was both beautiful and terrifying. His skin shifted patterns like the walls of the ship, and his purple eyes glowed with their own light. "Welcome, Kim Du-Young," Calvex said through Jai-Yun's translation. "You stand before the court of the Stellar Dominion. In 3 days, you will make your wish. Until then, you will learn our ways so you understand the great honor we have given you." That night in the room they gave him on the flagship, Du-Young finally looked at what Jai-Yun had slipped into his pocket. It was a small clear crystal that glowed softly. When he held it close to his eye, he saw writing inside it. "Their ships run on quantum networks, all connected, all vulnerable. I'm with the Resistance. We'll talk more soon." Du-Young quickly hid the crystal under his mattress. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was racing faster. The aliens had brought him to their heart of power. They had no idea that their translator was a Resistance member, and most importantly, they didn't know that every second he spent on their ship, he was studying their technology. As he lay in bed, watching the strange patterns move across the ceiling, Du-Young smiled. He was starting to know exactly what he would wish for. The next morning, Jai-Yun came to show Du-Young around the flagship. They walked through long hallways that changed color as they passed. Alien crew members moved past them, their metal robes flowing like water. As they walked, Jai-Yun taught Du-Young how to look like he was just listening to her explain alien customs, while they actually talked about more important things. "The Resistance has people everywhere," Jai-Yun said quietly, pretending to point out an interesting pattern on the wall. "Even here on the flagship. One of them is Li Ta-1. He used to work on quantum computers for the military before the invasion. He's pretending to be a regular maintenance worker now." Du-Young nodded, acting like he was admiring the wall. "How many humans are up here?" he asked. "About 300, Jai-Yun replied. "They took the best scientists and engineers from Earth to help maintain their technology. The aliens think we're too simple to understand how their machines really work. That's their biggest mistake." They passed through a large room filled with glowing pillars. Du-Young noticed how the lights inside the pillars pulsed in patterns. They reminded him of the quantum interference patterns he used to study in his lab. "These are part of their central network," Jai-Yun explained, pretending to tell him about alien art. "Every ship in the Dominion's fleet is connected through quantum entanglement. It's how they coordinate such a large empire." Du-Young's eyes widened. This was exactly what he had been hoping to learn. "Like a giant quantum computer," he whispered. "Yes, but much more advanced than anything we had on Earth. Taiwan says it's both their greatest strength and their biggest weakness. One problem in the network could affect every ship at once." Later that day, they met Taiwan in a quiet corner of the ship's garden level. He was dressed in simple worker's clothes, carrying tools that helped him blend in. His eyes were sharp and clever as he spoke quietly to them. "The whole fleet is like one big brain," Taiwan explained, pretending to fix something in the garden. "Each ship is connected to every other ship instantly, no matter how far apart they are. It's beautiful engineering, but it's also dangerous. If someone could change the quantum state of one important node, it would change all the others too." Du-Young thought about his research back on Earth. He had been studying similar ideas, but on a much smaller scale. The aliens had taken his basic understanding of quantum physics and shown him how it could work in ways he had only dreamed about. That evening, alone in his room, Du Young wrote equations in his head, since he wasn't allowed to have paper. The aliens' quantum network was like a huge web, with each ship connected to every other ship instantly. If he could understand exactly how it worked. A plan was forming in his mind, but first, he needed the aliens to give him the right knowledge. His wish would have to be worded very carefully. Too direct, and they would suspect something. Too vague, and he wouldn't get the information he needed. Jia Yun visited him one last time before bed. "Tomorrow's your last day of preparation," she said. "Then you make your wish. The resistance is ready to help. Whatever you decide to do." Do Young smiled. "I know exactly what I'm going to wish for," he said. "And the aliens will never see it coming." The day of the wish ceremony arrived. The flagship's great hall was filled with thousands of aliens. Their metal robes sparkled and shifted in the strange light. Screens floated in the air, broadcasting the event to Earth and every planet in the stellar dominion. Du Young stood before Calvex's floating throne. Jia Yun stood beside him to translate. She looked calm, but Du Young could see her hands shaking slightly. They both knew everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. "Qin Du Young of Earth." Calvex's voice boomed through the hall. "You have spent 3 days learning about our great empire. You have seen our power and our mercy. Now, speak your wish." The whole room went silent. Even the walls seemed to stop their usual shifting patterns. Du Young took a deep breath. He had practiced this moment in his head 100 times. "Supreme Warlord," Du Young said, keeping his eyes respectfully lowered as Jia Yun translated. "I am a teacher of physics. My whole life, I have tried to understand how things work. Now that I have seen your amazing technology, I have only one wish." He paused. In the corner of his eye, he could see Ta Wan pretending to work on a wall panel. Everything depended on asking for exactly the right thing in exactly the right way. "I wish to understand," Du Young continued carefully, "the complete mathematical proof of why your faster-than-light travel works." The great hall erupted in alien laughter. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with thunder. Even Calvex was making the strange laughing sounds. They thought his wish was funny. "A human wants to understand our science," one alien lord said loudly. "They barely understand their own atom bombs." "He could have asked for riches or power," another alien shouted. "Instead, he wants homework." Calvex raised his hand, and the laughter stopped instantly. His purple eyes studied Du Young carefully. "Interesting," the Supreme Warlord said. "Most species ask for weapons or territory, but you want knowledge." "Yes, Supreme Warlord," Du Young answered. "Just the mathematical proof. Nothing more." Calvex smiled. His teeth looked like polished silver. "Your species is amusing," he said. "You think so small, yet dream so big. Very well. Your wish is granted. The knowledge will be transferred directly to your mind." An alien wearing white robes stepped forward holding a small crystal. The crystal glowed with all the colors Du Young had ever seen, and some he hadn't. The alien pressed the crystal against Du Young's forehead. The knowledge hit him like a tidal wave. Numbers, equations, and concepts poured into his brain. He saw how space could be folded like paper. He understood how quantum entanglement could connect points light years apart. Most importantly, he saw how their whole system worked together. When it was over, Du Young was on his knees, breathing hard. His nose was bleeding a little, but his mind was racing with new understanding. He looked up at Calvex and smiled politely. "Thank you, Supreme Warlord," he said. "Your generosity will never be forgotten." As the ceremony ended and the aliens celebrated what they saw as a harmless wish, Du Young caught Jia Yun's eye. She saw his slight nod and had to hide her own smile. The aliens had just given them exactly what they needed to bring down their entire empire. After the ceremony, Du Young lay on his bed in his room on the flagship, his mind racing with new knowledge. The aliens had given him more than just the mathematics of faster-than-light travel. They had shown him how their entire technology worked together, like seeing all the pieces of a giant puzzle at once. He closed his eyes and watched the equations dance in his mind. The aliens used quantum entanglement in ways he had never imagined possible. Every ship in their fleet was connected by special particles that existed in two places at once. When one particle changed, all the others changed too, no matter how far apart they were. Jai Yun knocked on his door and entered with Taiwan. They had told the guards they were checking on his health after the knowledge transfer. As soon as the door closed, they gathered close to hear what he had learned. "It's amazing," Du Young whispered, his eyes bright with excitement. "Their whole fleet is like one big quantum computer. Each ship has special crystals that are connected to every other ship. They use these connections to talk to each other, to control their weapons, even to keep their artificial gravity working." Taiwan nodded slowly. "Just like we thought. But now you understand exactly how it works." "Yes," Du Young said. He got up and paced the room quietly. "Remember my research back on Earth? I was studying how quantum particles get tangled together. The aliens used the same idea, but they've solved all the problems we could never figure out." Jai Yun looked worried. "But how does this help us? We can't build our own quantum network to fight them." Du Young smiled. "We don't need to. Think about a row of dominoes. If you knock over the first one, all the others fall too. Their quantum network is the same. If we can change the state of enough important particles at once, it will affect every ship in their fleet." He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "The aliens think they gave me harmless knowledge. They think humans are too simple to understand their science. But they didn't realize that I spent years studying the basic ideas behind their technology. What they gave me was like a teacher's guide to their whole empire." Taiwan's eyes widened as he understood. "So we could shut down their whole fleet at once. Every ship everywhere." "Better than that," Du Young said. "We could scramble their artificial gravity, disable their weapons, even turn off their life support systems. Their quantum network is both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness." Jai Yun pulled out her hidden crystal communicator. "I need to tell the Resistance about this, but we'll have to be careful. The aliens watch everything we do." "We have time," Du Young said. "They think I'm just a curious professor who wanted to learn their science. They don't know that every minute I spend on this ship, I'm figuring out more ways to use their own technology against them." That night, as the aliens celebrated what they thought was their clever handling of the human's simple wish, Du Young worked out the details of his plan in his head. Soon, the Stellar Dominion would learn that giving knowledge to your enemy was more dangerous than giving them any weapon. The Resistance had a secret meeting place in the lowest level of the flagship. It was a small room filled with old maintenance equipment that the aliens never used. Du Young, Jai Yun, and Taiwan at there late at night when most of the alien crew was resting. "We need someone who can help us reach all the resistance groups on Earth," Jai Yun said. "Someone who knows how to coordinate people without getting caught." Taiwan smiled. "I know just the person. Choi Yun-ha. She used to plan military operations before the invasion. Now she runs a network of resistance cells all over the world. The aliens think she's just a harmless office worker." Do Young sat on an old metal box, drawing diagrams in the dust on the floor. "Tell me about her," he said. They needed someone they could trust completely. "Yunha is brilliant at planning," Taiwan explained. "She has resistance groups hidden in every major city. She makes the aliens think her people are just doing simple jobs, but they're really watching and learning everything they can." Jai Yun used her crystal communicator to send a message to Earth. An hour later, Yunha's face appeared in the crystal. She was a small woman with clever eyes and a serious face. "So you're the professor who asked for knowledge instead of power," Yunha said. "Smart choice. Tell me what you learned. Do Young explained his plan. The aliens' quantum network has 3 main control centers, he said. One is here on the flagship, one is in their base on Mars, and one is in their biggest ship on Earth, the one floating over New York. We need to attack all 3 at once, Ta One added. If we miss even one, the network might be able to fix itself. Yunha nodded. How many people do we need? 3 teams, Du Young said. Each team needs someone who understands quantum physics. I can teach them what they need to know. And each team needs fighters who can protect them while they work. I can get you the people, Yunha said. But how do we change the quantum particles? We don't have alien technology. Do Young smiled. That's the clever part. We don't need their technology. Every quantum control center has crystals that connect to the network. These crystals are very sensitive to certain sound waves. If we play the right sound at the right frequency, the crystals will change their quantum state. Ta One finished, his eyes lighting up. And when they change, every crystal in every ship in the whole fleet will change too, Jia Yun said. Like a chain reaction. Yunha was quiet for a moment, thinking. How long do you need to prepare? She asked. 2 weeks, Du Young said. I need to calculate the exact frequency, and your teams need to practice. We'll only get one chance at this. If we fail, the aliens will know what we tried to do. 2 weeks, Yunha agreed. I'll have everything ready. The aliens think they're so smart, giving you knowledge instead of power. They don't understand that knowledge is the greatest power of all. As they ended the meeting, Du Young felt both excited and scared. In 2 weeks, they would try to bring down an empire that ruled hundreds of worlds, and it would all depend on sound waves and quantum physics. 2 weeks passed quickly. During the day, Du Young pretended to be grateful for his new knowledge, spending time in the alien library reading about their science. At night, he worked with the resistance, teaching them everything they needed to know about quantum physics and sound waves. Yunha had chosen the teams carefully. The Mars team was led by a young physicist who understood quantum mechanics. The New York team had an engineer who worked with sound waves. Du Young would lead the team on the flagship himself, with Jia Yun and Tai One by his side. Each team carried a special device that Ta One had built. They looked like ordinary maintenance tools, but inside they held powerful speakers that could make very specific sound waves. The sound would be too high for humans or aliens to hear, but the quantum crystals would feel it. On the morning of their plan, Du Young sat in his room, pretending to read. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was calm. He had checked his calculations 100 times. The sound frequency had to be exactly right. Even a tiny mistake would ruin everything. It's time, Jia Yun said, entering his room. Yunha says all teams are in position. They walked through the flagship's corridors, carrying their hidden device. The aliens didn't look at them twice. Humans were always moving around the ship, doing simple jobs. The aliens never thought their servants could be dangerous. In New York, the resistance team was climbing through maintenance tunnels in the alien ship. They were dressed as cleaning staff, their sound device hidden in a bucket of cleaning supplies. The team leader kept checking her watch, waiting for the exact right time. On Mars, the third team was already inside the control center. They had spent weeks learning the alien schedules, knowing exactly when the guards would change shifts. They hid in a storage room, watching the minutes tick by on their clock. All teams ready, Yunha's voice whispered through their crystal communicators. She was coordinating everything from her secret base on Earth. Remember, you must activate the devices at exactly the same moment. The quantum network will detect any single change and fix it. Do Young, Jia Yun, and Ta One reached the flagship's control center. It was a huge room filled with glowing crystals. Alien technicians moved between the crystals, checking readings and adjusting settings. None of them noticed the 3 humans walking to different corners of the room. 1 minute, Yunha's voice whispered. Do Young placed his device near the biggest crystal. He could see its quantum patterns shifting inside, connecting it to every ship in the Stellar Dominion's fleet. Soon, those connections would be their weakness. 30 seconds. Jai-yun pretended to clean near her crystal. Tai-yun checked fake readings on his tablet. Around the room, alien technicians continued their work, not knowing everything was about to change. 10 seconds. Do Young's hand moved to the hidden switch on his device. In New York and Mars, other hands did the same. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do Young pressed the switch. Across 3 worlds, sound waves that no one could hear began to shake the quantum crystals. The crystals' patterns started to change. And through the quantum network, those changes began to spread to every ship in the alien fleet. The revolution had begun. The effect of the sound waves was not instant. For a few seconds, nothing seemed to happen. The alien technicians in the control room continued their work, not noticing anything wrong. Then, one by one, the quantum crystals began to change color. Their usual blue glow turned purple, then red. An alarm started to sound throughout the flagship. Alien technicians rushed to their stations, trying to understand what was happening. Their screens showed the quantum network changing in ways they had never seen before. Warning, a computer voice announced in all languages. Quantum network destabilization detected, attempting to restore normal patterns. Do Young watched as the aliens tried to fix the problem. But he knew they couldn't stop it now. The quantum changes were spreading through their network faster than light itself. Every crystal in every ship was connected, and every crystal was changing. Across the room, Jai-yun pretended to look worried while hiding a smile. Tai-yun kept working at his station, watching as the aliens grew more and more panicked. Through their crystal communicator, they could hear similar reports from the teams in New York and Mars. Suddenly, the artificial gravity flickered. Everyone in the room floated for a moment before dropping back to the floor. The walls of the ship, usually flowing with patterns of light, went dark. Emergency lights came on, casting everything in a red glow. Supreme Warlord, an alien officer shouted, "We're losing control of all systems. The quantum network it's." Carl Vex burst into the control room, his metal robes swirling around him. His purple eyes blazed with anger as he looked at the changing crystals. Then his gaze fell on Do Young, and understanding dawned on his face. "You," he said. "The wish, the knowledge. You understood more than we thought possible." "Yes," Do Young said, standing tall. "Humans aren't as simple as you thought. We understand quantum physics too. And we understand that every system has a weakness." All over Earth, alien ships were losing power. Their anti-gravity engines failed, making them drift in the sky. Their weapons went dead. Their communications stopped working. The mighty fleet of the Stellar Dominion was becoming nothing more than metal shells floating in space. Through their crystal communicator, they heard Yunha's voice. "It's working. Reports are coming in from everywhere. London, Tokyo, Moscow. All alien ships are shutting down." Calvex stared at the readings on the screens. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our technology is perfect. The quantum network cannot fail." "Not fail," Do Young corrected him. "Change. Just like you changed Earth when you invaded. Now it's our turn to make changes." The Supreme Warlord looked at Do Young with a mix of anger and respect. "One wish," he said. "We gave you one small wish, and you used it to defeat an empire that rules hundreds of worlds." "Knowledge is the greatest power," Du Young said, remembering Yunha's words. "You should have remembered that before you let me understand your science." Over the next few hours, Earth's military took control of the powerless alien ships. The Stellar Dominion's great invasion ended not with a battle, but with physics and sound waves. Humans would learn to use the alien technology, but they would use it wisely, remembering the lesson that knowledge should be used to help, not to conquer. And somewhere in the quantum network, the changed crystals continued to glow their new color, a reminder that sometimes the smallest changes can have the biggest effects.